Hello everyone. In today's video, we are diving into something that merges the world of AI and DevOps. It is building a serverless AI application using AWS Bedrock, AWS API Gateway, and Lambda. In this demo, I will walk you through creating a simple AI application. A DevOps Pro are looking to add something on AI to your stack, then you are at the right place. So let's start. So these are the topics we'll be discussing today. That is AWS Bedrock, API Gateway, AWS Lambda, and architecture of our application, and then we'll go to demo. So first is AWS Bedrock. AWS Bedrock is a managed services which hosts the foundation models or LLMs. It supports various LLMs like Claude, Amazon Titan, Meta's Llama, and other things. So basically, with Bedrock, you don't have to worry about managing the underlying AI infrastructure. Instead, you can focus on using pre-trained models for developing your application. Basically, it simplifies integration of AI capabilities into your application. So let's go to AWS console. So this is the Bedrock. So as I was mentioning, it is a fully managed service for FMs. FM is nothing but foundation models, and it provides various models from various companies like uh, Llama, Stable Diffusion, Clad, Amazon Titan, and all these models are available here. You can plug and play with these. Let's do get started. And here you have all the models. So if you wanted to use any of the foundation models, then you would actually need to get the access. So if you go here, base model, and then if you point here, if you see, it says this account does not currently have access to this model, request access. So once I click on the model access, so I can just request for access here using this particular screen. And also the other thing is, the models are not available in all the regions. Most of them are available in US East one. So make sure you are using US East one. And in my case, I did request for access for a couple of the models, uh, Jamba and Titan, Clad, and Llama 8 billion. I did request access. So other thing I would like to discuss is the pricing. So these are priced per token. So if you see, uh, for this particular model, they are charging like less than few cents for every 100 tokens. So when I say tokens, you can assume as like individual units of text or code that are processed by the foundation. Today we are going to use Clad. I do have access for that, so I'll be using Clad for our demo. Next is API Gateway. So We have API Gateway, a fully managed service that allows you to create, publish, and maintain APIs. So API Gateway acts as a friend door for routing incoming HTTP requests to other services like Lambda. So that's where we use API Gateway. So in our case, we are using API Gateway and the request is routed to Lambda. We'll, we'll see once I explain you about the architecture. And the next is AWS Lambda. So it's a serverless architecture, meaning it allows you to run code without provisioning or managing any infrastructure. So in my case, I'm using AWS Lambda as a serverless alternative, but there are other service providers who also have similar services. In Azure, they call it Azure Functions, and GCP, they call it Cloud Functions. In this architecture, we have a front end that's a UI which you can use it from the browser. And in the browser, once a user provides a prompt, it is actually redirected to API Gateway, and then API Gateway routes it to Lambda, and then Lambda invokes AWS Bedrock, and internally it uses CLAD model, and then a response is generated, and then it is sent back to front end where user can actually see see the response from the foundation model. That's the overview of the demo, and let's try to create it now. Let's go to AWS. So first let's create the Lambda function. So we need to create Lambda function. So I'll just use bedrock underscore function as the name, and then I'll just use Python 10. I'll use create from scratch. I'm not sure why it is very slow here. Okay, and then for the code part, I actually have the code in my GitHub, so I'll just use copy paste it here. So this is the basic code which we'll be using here. So here from the body, it is looking for prompt, and then the default temperature and max token values are defined here. If the user provides it, then it's okay, but if it doesn't, then these default values are taken, and then these are passed to the model. So here we are defining the model. So clad v2, this is the model I am using in our case, and then the response is sent back. So 200 okay, and it is actually parsed here, and then response is sent back. That's what it does. So we'll just do deploy here. That's the code part. And also in order for Lambda to talk to Bedrock, I have created a role. So let's look at the role first. I'll just do duplicate here, and IAM roles, and I named it as Lambda Bedrock. Yeah. So this is the role I have created, and I did assign Amazon Bedrock full access and Cloud Event full access. Added CloudWatch event full access as well, so that Lambda logs can be generated in the CloudWatch. So now we have the role, and we need to add this particular role to our Lambda function. So let's go to configuration and permissions and edit. So existing role, and then I'll just use Lambda Bedrock role and save it. And other thing what I observed is, in the general configuration, the timeout is set as 3 seconds. So looks like depending upon what the memory we assign, it is actually taking some time to respond. So I was getting internal server error. So let's change it to maybe like 10 seconds. We can go shorter than that, but to be safe side, I'll just put 10 seconds and save it. So we have created the Lambda function with the code, and then we assign the role, the permissions, and then we did increase the timeout to 10 seconds. So that's the Lambda part. Now let's jump on to API gateway. So now we have Lambda, but how do we trigger it? So we are triggering using API gateway. So let's create a API gateway, a HTTP API, and then I'll just put Bedrock API, and then add integration. Ours is Lambda, and then once we do here, we are able to see it, and I just selected it. Then let's go, and this is the, and as you know, we are actually giving prompt, so it should be post. So I selected post, and then route as maybe clad, and then do next. For the stage, I'll just do add and do prod a stage, and then do next. And so, and then I will create it. So now we have a route and stage, and we need to deploy it. So prod and let's deploy. So now we deployed it. So we can check if it's working or not using our Postman. So I did open a Postman in the browser. Let's go and grab this particular invoking URL, and then I'll do post, and then I did mention route as slash clad. So if you see routes here, it is mentioned clad. So I'll just put clad here, and then I'll just put empty string for now. I'll see how it responds. As you see, we were able to get the response. So let's try to ask some question here. Write a poem on Gen AI for kid, and then I'll put temperature as 7 and max token as 200. Do send, and yeah, it did provide some content for us. So what actually happened once we ask a question is, this particular API gateway routed the request, routed the request, and then triggered Lambda function. So if you see, let's reload here. So if you see, this is the trigger. So once we trigger, the Lambda function gets invoked, and then internally the Lambda function is calling clad foundation model and then responding back. So that's the overview. To make this particular architecture more user friendly, I have created a GitHub pages. So it will look something like this. So it's a simple GitHub page where I just put some heading, and then I did uh, put a prompt and then ask. So if I do what is machine learning, so it did fail. So okay, it's good that we got a error here. Let's see why did it fail. So let's inspect and go to network, and let's do again, and here it is. Okay, yeah, it this particular code is referring to old, the HTML file is referring to old uh, API gateway. Let's change it here. I'll just change it here. So this is the URL we need to change here. So let me copy paste from here. I'll just use slash clad because that's the same uh, route I did use. So I'll just do commit changes. So regarding GitHub pages, right? So once we have your index.html file here in the repository, you can go to settings, and then there is something called pages. So once you have the pages, you can just do build and deploy, and you can just mention which branch and the root directory, and it itself searches for that particular index.yaml index html, and then it will spin up a simple web page which I showed. Yeah, probably it takes a minute. So let me stop the recording and come back once it is ready. So now it got updated here. Let's go to pages, and you see it did got updated. And if you go to this particular site, and if I do hi, it says hello. And if I ask some question, what is machine learning for DevOps? Yeah, as I was mentioning, it did take more than 3 seconds for sure. That's the reason I was getting timeout error before. So I don't want to get into that particular trouble again. So that's the reason I just put 10 seconds. But yeah, we can change as we need. But yeah, so that wraps up our video on using AWS Bedrock, API Gateway, and Lambda to build an AI powered application. We have covered the core concepts and shown how you can use serverless and AI technologies in your DevOps workflow. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Stay tuned for more content that brings together the best of AI and DevOps. Thank you.